Each country is different, and no matter where you live, there are pros and cons. In each of our individual countries, there are issues that never get solved, have no foreseeable outcome, or leaders just don't have the resources or drive to attend to a specific problem. Welcome to alux.com, the place where future billionaires come to get inspired. If you're not subscribed yet, you're missing out. David Cameron, the former Prime Minister of the UK, once said, "Countries are different. They make different choices. We cannot harmonize everything." Well, let's see if countries are really all that different. Number 1. Countries are old. Infrastructure can't keep up with the demands of its population. Aluxers, we get it. Nobody can choose the age of the country they're born in, but the exponential growth of its population puts a huge strain on existing infrastructure. It's predicted by 2050, 70% of the population will live in cities, which is a frightening projection because already cities are bursting at the seams. In this scenario, world leaders are unable to keep up with rapid urbanization, and despite their best intentions, nothing is being done to alleviate the problem. The root cause of this is a lack of funding, because to adapt old infrastructure, transport, power, water, and telecommunication networks all need to be upgraded, maintained, or built from scratch. Putin also brought this into focus when he said that most US presidents have good intentions, but with Obama, for example, he couldn't always fix problems because the bureaucracy was just so damn complicated. Number 2. A weak central government. In his paper, Pathways to State Failure, Jay Goldstone defined a failed state as one that has lost both its effectiveness and legitimacy. He brought forward several examples. Escalation of communal group conflict. Examples included Syria, Somalia, Myanmar, and Chad, amongst many. State predation, which we'll touch on later. He included Venezuela, Brazil, Philippines, and Croatia, to highlight just a few. Democratic collapse. Reform crisis, like Iran under the Shah, or regional or guerrilla rebellion, which we focus on now. Take Colombia as an example. Their central government exerts zero control over half of the country, currently dominated by left-wing guerrillas and right-wing paramilitaries. The state's glaring absence means basic public services are missing, roads and healthcare are severely lacking, and there are no well-thought-out property rights available to their citizens. At one point, roughly 5 million hectares of land were expropriated by Colombia, typically by force. Many parts of Colombia are poverty-stricken, at the mercy of armed insurgents and paramilitary forces. However, where Colombia has done good is their national police have worked hard at capturing drug lords. Over the past decade, they've extradited roughly 100 a year and offer advice to other Latin American and African countries in this regard. Number 3. Lack of property rights. Aluxers, we just mentioned how Colombia doesn't have their property rights quite figured out, to put it mildly. In countries where there are insecure property rights, economic development is quite hindered, and there are limited economic opportunities for poor people. Gerald P. O'Driscoll Jr., a senior fellow at the Cato Institute, and Lee Hoskins, senior fellow at the Pacific Research Institute, explored the role of property rights in economic development and suggested that prosperity and property rights are inextricably linked. The lack of property rights can lead to many problems, including opportunism, exploitation of property, and no desire to maintain or upkeep current living quarters. Number 4. Too many middlemen and leaders are greedy. Albert Einstein once said, 3 great forces rule the world: stupidity, fear, and greed. If we had to list every greedy country, we'd be with you all day. In our video, 15 Reasons Why Money Doesn't Solve Homelessness, we mentioned Jacob Zuma, the former president of South Africa. A great portion of the population in South Africa live in squatter camps and informal settlements, yet the former president used $28 million to upgrade his own home. Money that belonged to the taxpayer that should have been used to fix up roads, provide education, and make the country better. Egypt is another example. Under Hosni Mubarak, the late former president of Egypt, the elite used their powers to create monopolies. Government and military owned great portions of the economy, and even when they did liberalize, large parts of the economy were privatized and given to friends and family of the late Mubarak. This move netted the Mubarak family close to $70 billion, while most Egyptians were unable to claw their way out of poverty. Number 5. Natural resources are abused and not looked after. A senior at the Council of Foreign Relations named Stuart M. Patrick writes, "Perversely, the worst developed outcomes, measured in poverty, inequality, and deprivation, are often found in those countries with the greatest natural resource endowments." Larry Diamond of Stanford University further adds, "There are 23 countries in the world that derive at least 60% of their exports from oil and gas, and not a single one is a real democracy." The mismanagement of natural resources is a huge challenge facing many countries. The exploitation of non-renewable sources triggers conflict around the globe. Even renewable resources, like water, are being abused in drought-stricken countries. The consequences of overexploitation are huge and include deforestation, forced migration, species going extinct, soil erosion, increase of greenhouse gases, and all of these contribute to a country not using their time, energy, and finances on bettering the life of its own people. Number 6. Projects are only pushed before elections. It should be a case of too little too late, but that's not how it goes. Many leaders make grand promises leading up to elections and just don't follow through. Take Silvio Berlusconi as an example. The former Prime Minister of Italy made many promises which he didn't keep. He promised to transform and unify the Italian right, which didn't transpire despite his best intentions. He promised to make his comrades rich, and that didn't happen either. He promised to reform his country's system of justice, which, when he did try, seemed like he did it for personal gain and not for the benefit of his people. Much the same in South Africa. Just before elections, political parties like to hand out food parcels, free t-shirts, fix RDP housing, and basically do all the things they should have been doing from the start. Joe Biden has come under fire just this week for originally promising to eradicate $50,000 worth of student loans for individual students, which he's now changed to $10,000, and it would take jumping through hoops just to be awarded that relief. Number 7. Natural disasters make it impossible to move forward. Luxor, every year natural disasters occur. Earthquakes, hurricanes, floods, you name it. They are tragic events where lives are lost, people's normal is no longer, and billions of dollars in losses are gone. Areas hit by the largest natural disasters see a mass exodus of the wealthy, while the poor have no choice but to remain behind. The situation causes great inequality. Poverty rates increase in those that remain, and it's near impossible to fix what's left. Let's head to California as our next example. While the Woolsey fire had burned 100,000 acres of land in Los Angeles and Ventura counties, and firefighters and civilians were out battling the blaze, the elite were hiring their own firefighters to protect their homes. According to the New York Post, private firefighters can be hired for $3,000 a day, and many insurance companies are offering the service, which naturally comes with exorbitant monthly premiums. Number 8. New technologies are blocked, banned, or not up to scratch. It's history's job to teach us what not to do in the future. Now, there's no denying that technology can disrupt the normal. It's hard to always keep up, and it can be scary. New technology means getting rid of the known for the unknown, and many countries are too afraid to do that. Let's go back to the 19th century. Railways were the next big thing, and the UK and US are embracing this new technology. But when Francis I was approached to consider a railway in Austria, he was afraid to go for it with the French Revolution fresh in his mind, thinking it would cause huge problems for the country. Same for Russia, who blocked new technologies to keep the Tsarist regime safe. So while teeny little Britain was getting thousands of miles of track, Russia had only one small piece leading to the palace, benefiting nobody but the Tsar. With COVID, the digital divide is clearer than ever. While some countries are coping easily with countless Zoom meetings, online tutoring, and anything internet-related, others are freezing every minute, lagging, and just not able to keep up. Number 9. Those in power hire their cronies to do the work. It's all well and good to hire your besties or those that give you a little something something under the table, but they are the ones who are not qualified to do the job and do more harm than good. A prime example is once again former South African President Jacob Zuma, accused of nepotism when he gave a ministerial position to his daughter. Malawian President Lazarus Chakwera has also recently come under fire for announcing his new cabinet that had several family members included. Sri Lankan President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has appointed one brother as Prime Minister and Finance Minister and another brother as the Minister of Agriculture. Keeping it in the family takes a whole new meaning in some countries. Number 10. Countries are reluctant to embrace blockchain to fix problems. Blockchain technology can be used effectively in many spheres, yet so many countries are afraid to embrace it. For starters, it can be used for voting, which would have resulted in none of the tension that is underway in the USA at the moment. The results would have been authentic and legit, because all entries in a decentralized ledger are immutable and irreversible, according to MizDev.com. It would also benefit areas like copyright laws, charity, crowdfunding, real estate, cloud storage, and government operations. Then a big bonus is that cryptocurrency could be used, which also operates through blockchain. This virtual currency is immune to authoritative control. Number 11. No law and order. One of the things that needs to be working well is a state that does the following: provides a bit of order, provides laws that make life easier and better for all, have a good method to solve disputes, and access to basic public goods. It doesn't seem too difficult, yet many countries cannot make this happen, and when these basics don't happen, nothing happens. It's tragic in that many countries are struggling to deal with civil unrest and conflict. Take Somalia, for example. For roughly 3 decades, there have been armed conflict in Somalia, bombings, suicide attacks, kidnappings, and armed assaults. Civilians are displaced, killed, and injured, and there's no way out for the victims. Since 1960, when they gained independence, several attempts have been made to create an effective central state, but having just highlighted the situation in Somalia, it's fair to say that all attempts so far have failed. Number 12. Leaders don't have a shared vision. When this is the case, it's very difficult to get things done. When you have a shared vision, it's far easier to get moving on projects, get things signed off, and see change. When vision is not shared, it takes far longer to get decisions made, to get the go-ahead and implement those changes. In some countries, rulers have point-blank not listened to their cabinet or overruled them, like in the case of the late Robert Mugabe, former dictator and president of Zimbabwe. He ruled Zim for 37 years, and in that time brought the country to its knees despite warnings, advice, and guidance. Aluxers, we encourage you to listen to Why Nations Fail: The Origins of Power, Prosperity, and Poverty by Darren Asimoglu and James Robinson. We have a great partnership with Audible, so if it's your first time, use the code alux.com/freebook and you'll get the audiobook version free of charge. Number 13. Citizens keep speaking about the good old days. Aluxers, change is a part of life, and if we don't embrace it, we'll fall behind, despite a country's best efforts to move forward. If its citizens keep pining for the good old days, there'll be little movement in the right direction. Many of these better days or good old days were times when there was no equality, where people, despite being aware of racial bias or discriminatory behavior, continued living their perfect life in their lovely home with their gardener, nanny, and access to every healthcare facility available to them. Which leads us to our next point. Number 14. Your country has not embraced diversity. In countries with a me versus them attitude, friction, unhappiness, and instability follow suit. Insider Monkey took 2 big surveys regarding race and combined them to reveal the following results. Of 83,000 people questioned in 61 countries, the most racist countries were deemed to be 10. South Korea, 9. South Africa, 8. Palestine, 7. Kuwait, 6. Philippines, 5. Egypt, 4. Libya, 3. Bahrain, 2. Lebanon, and 1. India. Of course, these results could differ dramatically if every country had been included, but it's clear to see that not one of these countries listed are first world countries. Number 15. Gender inequality hinders development. Several studies prove that gender inequality leads to compromised economic performance. One study by Stefan Clausen affirmed that despite progress, gender gaps persist in many developing countries. According to him, these gaps reduce economic performance in a country. The study further affirmed if the gaps were non-existent, GDP would be much higher. Gender inequality means that so much human potential is being lost and not utilized constructively, which can limit a country's growth exponentially. Like the late and great Nelson Mandela once said, "Freedom cannot be achieved unless the women have been emancipated from all forms of oppression." So, Alexers, why do you feel like nothing is getting done in your country? We love hearing from you in the comments. And since you stuck with us until the end, we of course have a bonus for you. With the pandemic underway, the world has been actively watching which countries have handled the crisis well and which have handled it poorly. Italy, the UK, Brazil, Mexico, and the US have all been hit the hardest so far. The US has the most infections and was over 12 million when this video was recorded, with over 1,000 deaths a day. In these cases, barring Italy, the government responded too slowly to curb the spread. It's going to take very long for these countries to pull themselves out of the mess they're in, and they'll need to make significant changes to earn the trust and respect of their citizens again, because as we know, when trust is broken, it's very difficult to get it back. Unfortunately, trust will need to be earned back before anything else gets done in these countries. Thanks for watching, Alexers. We always appreciate you and your commitment to our channel. Subscribe for more videos daily, and don't forget to give us a thumbs up if you liked this one.